Hey, y'all, and welcome to the Healthy by Heather Brown podcast, where I encourage you in healthy mind, body, and spirit through my Sunday reset. Let's get into it. All right, girl gang. Today we have Samantha Stupak, who is the founder of CBH Energetics and Pets Medela, global leaders in bioenergetic hair and saliva testing. Say that 3 times fast. What started with her own battle against chronic Lyme has turned into a mission to help millions reclaim their health with natural science-backed solutions. With her engineering background and certifications in natural and brain health, she bridges cutting-edge science with holistic healing, empowering people worldwide to live vibrant, resilient lives. And today we're even going to talk about some of my results. I think you guys are really going to love this episode. With all that said, let's get into it. Samantha, welcome to the show.
Hi, Heather. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So y'all, we totally nerded out yesterday on a video call and got to chat all about my CBH Energetics test results, what they meant, all the things. So tell everybody a little bit that's like, wait, what is CBH Energetics? What kind of testing are you doing? Give us the baseline, maybe.
Yes. So CBH Energetics and Pet Medela, which is the pet side of our testing, we use a form of testing that is quite a bit different than traditional testing. So with traditional testing, you're envisioning going to a lab, getting a blood draw, maybe doing a stool sample or a urine sample. We don't do any of that. That's a lot more invasive than what we do. We use a simple hair and saliva analysis. And then instead of that typical type of test where you envision a lab where you have vials and droppers and syringes and things like that, we use a digital way of testing, and it's all through a Hertz measurement. So during the testing process, just to nerd out for a second, I don't want to lose anybody, but it's kind of taking biology, which is the hair and the saliva, where it meets physics, which is looking at that vibrational pattern of what comes off of the hair and saliva, what emanates from the hair and saliva. And we look at hundreds of data points. We test against thousands, but then in your results, like you saw yesterday, you see hundreds of data points that basically walk you through exactly where your body is holding stress and why. So we look at the full body, we look at 14 systems, and that includes all the different organs. So for example, we talked about the endocrine system. So we look at your thyroid, your hypothalamus, your adrenal glands. And then once we find out where you're holding stress, that's when we start digging deeper to find out why. And so that could be a variety of things, whether it's a food sensitivity, nutritional deficiencies, starving that area from being able to work optimally. I love the toxin testing because that's where we are looking at so many different factors, whether it's heavy metals, parasites, viruses, mold that is in there wreaking havoc on specific areas of the body. And what we find, there's certain organs that have an affinity with these specific toxins. For example, viruses love the thyroid. Parasites, of course, love the gut. And I could go on and on about that. And we test for hormones. And the beautiful part is we don't just give this information to you and say, okay, Heather, here's all your information. You go figure it out on your own with what to do to balance all of it back. We specifically test your hair and saliva to find out what can you tolerate for a regimen. So let's say you have parasites and you just want to do a heavy parasite cleanse. But if your gut is in a discombobulated way and you can't handle an intense parasite cleanse right now, we're going to be able to see that when we test to see what you can tolerate for a regimen. So it's really giving that person the exact right formula at the right time for what they can tolerate. So it's quite a methodic process. And then, of course, we also test the brain and we test emotions, and we do the same thing on our pet side too.
Which is so cool. But I think that I'm just being honest. We haven't had anybody talk on here very much about parasites. And so I feel like some people just in, common American culture are going to be like, wait, what? Like I could have parasites like my dog, or you know what I mean? So could you break that down a little bit for us? How do you get a parasite? Can people have them and not even know it? What are symptoms that typically looks like? And maybe you could even share a little bit about your Lyme disease. And I think that would be a really cool tie into all of it.
For sure. I think there's a famous saying, and I forget who says it, but if you have a pulse, you have a parasite. That's what they say. So basically everyone has parasites.
Yes.
I think a lot of people have this thought process that you have to get a parasite in a third world country or, just when you're traveling, but that's not the case. Parasites are everywhere. Like if you love on your dog or cat, you're probably going to get a parasite from them. You can play in your garden, you weed your garden, you can get parasites from your soil. You can get parasites when you go out to even a nice restaurant. And so it is a very common organism that wrecks a lot of people's health. And a lot of people don't realize that you have to address them. Otherwise, long term, it turns into bigger issues. So just to gross you and potentially some listeners out for a moment, if you do a parasite cleanse, it is very common to pass things in your stool, like long worms.
Yeah.
So awkwardly gratifying, and very essential.
Yes. I have seen some of those parasites that have been passed on several different Instagram accounts and such. And it's so crazy that is in your body and just all the ways that it affects you. I am curious because I know in other countries I've heard, and so I'm curious to hear your take on this, that just like we, deworm and give our pets antiparasitics annually, that people in other countries, that's just part of what they do. They take an antiparasitic or do a parasite cleanse once or twice a year. What do you do, and what do you recommend for the average American mom?
I think it's an awesome idea to do a parasite cleanse at least once a year, as long as someone can tolerate it. Some people are so fragile, and a parasite cleanse can be pretty aggressive. And so if someone embarks on one before their body is ready, or if they're chronically constipated, you could start killing parasites in your body where they're dying, and then they become a neurotoxin because they're recirculating through your bloodstream, and that person might feel worse before they start feeling better because they can't get rid of the toxin at that point because their pathways might be congested. So I am always a big fan of test first. Test, and once you see what you're dealing with and what your body can tolerate, then you can take the appropriate measures of like what to do to clear them. Personally, I usually see parasites come up on my own scans at least once or twice a year, and I do the cleanse for them. So personally, I do a cleanse every time they come up because my body can tolerate it.
Yes. And so Samantha, to be clear, on the test that I took, we didn't see any parasites in my body, I don't think, or we did.
No, I don't believe, I don't have your results up at the moment, but I don't think you had any parasites right now.
I don't think so either, but I have done a parasite cleanse in the past year. So that makes me feel good. I'm like, yay, it's still working for now.
Yeah. Next year, you'll probably want to do another one.
Exactly. Okay. So talk a little bit about your methodology with getting Lyme disease and then how that led you to here, especially I think when people hear that you started out as an engineer and now you're here, it's kind of like, whoa, that's a big change. So how did it all happen?
Yeah, I was working as an engineer down in Chicago and loving my mid-20s life there, great social life and lots of fun every night with friends. And we ended up going on a cruise, and it was in the Caribbean. And I thought, well, I just probably drank too much alcohol, stayed up too late, had too much fun by the time I got home, and I was just wiped out. But from the time that I got home, thinking maybe I was coming down with the flu, to a month later, I was completely bedridden. I couldn't walk. I lost my ability to form sentences. There was days I had no idea what my own name was. And I lived like that for 4 years. And it was 4 years of a living hell because no doctor could find anything wrong with me. Well, my partner at the time was bringing me to doctor after. I saw hundreds of doctors, and all of them are like, your blood shows that you're healthy as a horse. MRIs, CT scans, x-rays, nothing showed there was anything wrong with me. Right. So of course, at that point, you start to think you're a little nuts. So I checked myself in. I didn't check myself in, but I went to a very renowned hospital and had them work me over for a month long. They looked at every orifice. They did everything they could to find out what was wrong with me. They found nothing. So they were like, well, here's an antidepressant. Good luck. Oh, and at that moment, I was like, I'm on my own here, and it made me, on the days where I was functioning a little bit more, I started just researching and trying to figure out what could I do. And I met this woman online, and she's like, you need to go see this doctor in Wisconsin. I think he could help you. So I got up there, and in my first appointment with him, he uses technology similar, but very different to what we use. Okay. And he's just like, this is all from a tick bite, and you have Lyme disease. And I was like, no. I've been tested monthly for the past 4 years. It was always negative. And he says, okay, well, good luck. and I hope you do well. And, here's your bill, which is really expensive. And, or take this regimen, make these lifestyle hacks, change this in your diet, and I'll see you again in a month. And I worked with him for 6 months to the point where I was walking, and I was deciding, do I go back to my career as an engineer, or do I go back to school to study bioenergetic medicine, which is what I did. And so I started a practice similar to how he was practicing with, having clients come in person.
Yeah.
And in my first week of having my own office, I had a 3-month wait list of people to get in to see me. And of course, I just wanted to help as many people as possible. So for 12 hours a day, I would see people, and I'm not eating right. I'm not taking breaks appropriately. So I'm like, this is not sustainable. I need to find another way. And that's when I leaned back into my engineering degree, and I started to work with the software engineers and the hardware manufacturers to build technology that could actually test the hair and saliva, and it's replicatable. So now we have 11 testing locations around the United States, and the technicians at each location mimic exactly how it was that I was testing back when I was seeing people in person. So, that was 15 years ago at this point. So we've tested on every continent almost, and it's just been such a rewarding process and changing so many people's lives.
Whoa, that's so incredible. And I think that also goes to the point of we as Americans are unfortunately just so unhealthy. The fact that you could that quickly build a wait list and that many people not getting answers. So I'm so glad that you founded this and that it is an option for people. So one of the things that I'm hearing you say is that you don't just chase symptoms, you're digging for root causes. Can you maybe break that down in a way that makes us rethink the way that we've always done health and the way that you had always done health? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Luckily I had parents that lived pretty healthy lives when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So I had a little bit of a foundation of eating well, although I can recall Lucky Charms cereal and occasionally some medications here and there. But so I feel like I had a little bit of a head start compared to maybe other people that are leaning a little bit more into medications and traditional medicine, that if there's a problem, here's a medication that might mask it. Mm-hmm. Or, I also thank God for modern medicine, because there's a time and a place always.
Absolutely.
But if we are looking at not just covering something with a medication versus looking at a root cause, say someone that has a thyroid issue, they go to the doctor and they find out they have a sluggish thyroid. So now they're on a medication to make sure their thyroid's functioning the way it should. Well, I like to know someone's doing better, but from me and my perspective, I want to know, why is that thyroid not functioning? Because I don't want to be stuck on a medication for the rest of my life. I don't want to depend on that forever.
Right.
So once we potentially test someone that has a thyroid issue, we'll find potentially why. And usually those whys stem from things like nutritional deficiency. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, the thyroid feeds on iodine and selenium and tyrosine, all these really good nutrients that oftentimes, if you're not absorbing them, that ends up being a gut issue. So your gut might impact your thyroid. Or you look at toxins. There's a lot of different toxins that, like the thyroid, like I mentioned earlier, viruses, molds, things like that.
Yes, which actually we can get into this a little bit now, I guess, but I had asked Samantha if she wouldn't mind sharing with you guys some of the things that she shared to me yesterday that were maybe like her top 3 concerns on my report, and kind of explain why. And also, I think it'd be really interesting, Samantha, if you could even share like how much of my issues are what you almost like expect to see with women around my age, versus maybe you could even say like, I thought I would see this on your report, but I didn't, because I think a lot of women might be looking for these answers, but just not know where to go or how to find them. So y'all, I'm going to share a little bit about my journey so far with CBH Energetics, just so you can hear it from my perspective. And I talked with Samantha about this yesterday, but in my mind, I have realized that, I'm realizing my body's not working as optimally as it should. I turned 40 in November. And so in my brain, I was kind of like, okay, I'm starting to panty liner, as my OBGYN calls it, into my period, panty liner out. And we're mostly women here, so I think it's okay to say that. It's on Shark Week, all the things. And my, acne has been really bad for many years. My brain just isn't as sharp as what it used to be. I'm starting to retain more weight in my midsection, and just not having the same energy, which I keep hearing with a lot of symptoms of perimenopause. my doctor would said, hey, Heather, I think we might want to go ahead and start you on a progesterone cream. Typically, what that means when you panty liner into a period and panty liner out is that your progesterone is low. I can prescribe you a cream. And I was like, oh, I really appreciate that. However, I'm going to want you to test my hormones so I can know what's going on, because I don't want to just slap progesterone on if that's not the problem. So, which I would love for you to speak to that, because I felt like you gave me really good education on that yesterday too. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm just going to set aside, several $100s, like $400 or $500, I think it is, to get the Dutch test to figure out my hormones. But what I learned from my pelvic floor therapist and my naturopath is that the Dutch test can be really insightful. However, it also is like you have to hit just the right window, like in between, I think it's day 19 and 21 of your period to get accurate results. So it can be really tricky. And so that's why CBH Energetics really stood out to me, because not only could I pay actually less than what the Dutch test is and find out all about my hormones, but I could find out about my brain and so many other things that are just incredible. So maybe Samantha, from there, can you explain a little bit about why it can be bad to Band-Aid with something like a progesterone cream, and then maybe some of the top findings you found on my report?
Yeah. And thanks for sharing. Yeah. I love how vulnerable you are with everything you have going on.
we don't hold back here. It's all in the board.
Yeah. So I find it super important to test before you just start slathering something on. But I'm in the mindset of, well, if you're only 39 years old right now, like why might you be low in progesterone? And that's where we want to start looking back. We want to look upstream a bit to find out, well, if you truly are low in progesterone, why? Mm-hmm. And then is it because a certain gland or organ isn't producing enough so that we can then look at, well, is it toxicities? Is it an enzyme deficiency? Is there something going on that's keeping you from producing your hormones as well as you should? Because if we can just bypass giving you something that your body might become dependent upon, then we can get to the root of it versus just kind of putting that Band-Aid on top.
Yeah.
Which for you, when it comes to some of this hormonal stuff in your results, I would say your results are pretty on spot for your age, but even more so for your lifestyle, because I feel like you're very much that type A, very driven, very busy. Maybe I would imagine, put your family's needs before your own, because those adrenal glands are the most stressed area of your entire body. And when that happens, just like your results from CBH show, your cortisol's off, and then your estrogen's off, and then your testosterone's off. And so it's like this domino effect of all of your hormones that then kind of bring you to some of the symptoms that you're experiencing now. Yeah. So just like we were talking about, giving your body some TLC right now, because doing that heavy drive and push and HIIT workouts and things like that, when your adrenal glands are a little bit on that chronically inflamed side and your cortisol is tanked, you're going to make it that much harder to recover your adrenal glands if you just keep pushing and pushing and pushing without taking that time for TLC for yourself.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big things for you. Another big thing for you, time and time again, was that you were showing the signs of basically of being protein deficient, which is fascinating, right? Because you eat a lot of protein.
We talked about it yesterday, and I was like, hey, do you care if I grab a chomped beef stick real quick? And she goes, yes, good. Actually, you need to grab protein. And I was like, girl, I eat like 145 grams of protein a day. And she was like, oh, your scans do not show that. Okay.
Yeah. But then that's the power of chatting with someone too, when you get your results, because then knowing that you're eating that much protein, we can look at your digestive system in your scan results, which showed your small intestine and your large intestine being chronically inflamed. And so when that happens, of course, your digestive system's working in overdrive, trying to break that food down. But if it's chronically inflamed, it's not doing a great job of that, which means it's not going to assimilate those nutrients as well as you should be. Mm-hmm. And when you're not assimilating those nutrients, the rest of your entire body is, basically jeopardized at that point, because it's not getting the nutrients it needs to thrive.
Yeah.
So that bears the question, well, why? Why are your intestines as inflamed as they are? And that's when we can see some of the different bacterias. You didn't have any parasites. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Oh gosh. I don't remember all the toxins you had come up, but you had some viruses, molds, and then some bacterias as well, which create that havoc and that inflammatory response in your gut.
Yeah.
But the one toxin I do recall off the top of my head was a resonating one. And just to let everyone know, we don't diagnose. This is all from that preface of we're looking for those energetic signatures that tell us what you've been exposed to and how it could be negatively impacting you. And so one of them for you was streptococcus. Yeah. And I know that you struggle with the chronic sinus issues. Mm-hmm. And so strep, often we think of it as like just strep throat, but oftentimes strep can be in different parts of the body, whether it's in the gut, whether it's in the sinuses, which I think is a big thing for you, not only because it came up in your full scan, which is our most popular and best place to start, but then we also ran a brain scan on you.
Yeah.
And it was the top toxin in your brain scan. And if you think about where your nose is and sinus issues in correlation to your brain, how that can play a big part in stressing different areas of your brain.
And just to bring it to a very logistic thing, so this resonates with the women that are listening to this, essentially what typically happens for me is that I will have allergies that get really bad, because right now we've got high ragweed count in Birmingham, Alabama. And then we, have really high pollen in the spring and the fall. I almost always am like, I've got postnasal drip. I've got this dry cough. My nose is running. I don't feel that bad until it then turns into a sinus infection. And that pretty much happens to me all the time. It used to happen 4 or 5 times a year. And they were like, we might even need to do sinus surgery on you. But since I've been going to my chiropractor and they started nasal adjustments, I've gotten a lot of relief from that. But it was just so interesting to hear that this might actually be the root cause of what it is. And I wouldn't have known that without this test.
Right. Yeah. And strep, I mean, it's such a common bacteria, and there's so many different strains of it. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people that have sinus issues. There's that huge correlation to strep. So I'm excited for you to implement some of the things that we talked about yesterday too, where not only is it the regimen that like the herbal, the homeopathic, that supplemental regimen that was listed in your report, but also some of the other things like the colloidal silver sprays or the propolis sprays that can get in and act as an antimicrobial, especially in those high allergy seasons.
Yes. Now, when you're saying that, do you have any brands? So if people are like, that's me, like if I have allergies that a lot of times turn into a sinus infection, do you have any brands that you recommend for colloidal silver or for that propolis spray that you guys like?
Yeah, well, we sell colloidal silver. Okay. And so I like the brand that we use of colloidal silver. You just have to get like a little spray bottle, like a nasal spray bottle, and pour some in there.
Okay, gotcha.
But yeah, and we use the Des Bio brand, but it's only sold through practitioners, which could be through us then. Okay. And then the other, like the propolis spray, there's a company called Be Healthy Farms. Okay. And they have a great list of a variety of propolis products.
Okay. I usually use that. It's called Beekeeper's Natural. Have you heard of that one?
I haven't heard of that one, no.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I get it on Amazon. And I mean, it is propolis and all that stuff, but I just wonder if there was like a number that you're looking for on the bottle or anything where it should be for maximum effectiveness or anything. But
oh, gotcha. No, I don't. Yeah, I'm not sure on that.
Okay. No worries. But then also, let's see. So we talked about that adrenals were a big issue for me, which I thought was so interesting. I learned something new. She said that I could even take my red light and put it on my low back, like where if you were to put your hands on your back and stretch back, like right where your hands are, that's where your adrenals sit, right?
Yep.
And so I thought that was fascinating and new information to help support my adrenals. And then with the strep, I think it's just that I am going to take the formula that you guys have for me on that, right? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then the other thing that we talked about was that my gut is really struggling. So can you explain why my gut is struggling? And then I'll talk about the sad things that I'm going to have to eliminate.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's, of course, the different microbes that came up, the bacteria, the actinomyces, the molds, and the mycotoxins. Those can have a big impact on just creating a lot of discomfort and inflammation in the gut. And I guess one of the other things that we didn't talk about yesterday was the fact that when you get a sinus infection, you're probably taking an antibiotic.
Right.
which can really strip all the good and all the bad, but all the good as well from your gut, which then just creates a time frame of having to rebuild that.
Yes.
But because of all of that, you start to develop jeopardized mucosa in your digestive wall lining, which once that happens, you start to develop food sensitivities. And sadly, you came up with quite a few, gluten and dairy being your primary two.
Yeah. Womp, womp.
Yeah.
And we talked about, she was like, red dye was up there really high, yellow dye, blue dye, which I wouldn't say that I consume a lot of. But I am curious. So since we talked yesterday, I was talking to my sister about it, and she was like, well, you should ask her this. She said that she heard that once you remove either gluten or dairy from your diet, that then it can almost be like when you start to add it back, your body almost like over responds to it. So have you heard anything like that, or where is she getting that from?
Oh yeah, she's on point.
Okay, great. Tell me more.
So you remove this fire that you're fueling when you consume gluten or dairy or anything like that.
Okay.
So when you take it out of your diet, your body is just like, oh my gosh, finally I can calm down. I would imagine you might feel less puffy. Your acne will probably improve because there's a huge correlation to your gut and your skin. In traditional Chinese medicine, the gut regulates the skin. Okay. And so I would imagine you probably will see some weight come off. So, like, all of those things are very inflammatory. Mm-hmm. But then let's say you go 30, 60 days without, and then you're like, I am ready for a grilled cheese sandwich. And you eat the grilled cheese sandwich. Your body has become accustomed not having it. And there's a very good chance your body's going to intuitively tell you, don't do that, Heather. And it could be acne, diarrhea, bloating, gassiness, headaches. It's just kind of different for everyone.
Okay.
And so, and I think everyone is different. You might be fine when you add it back. But what I've come to see with a lot of people is, like, if you truly can avoid it for a good chunk of time, I'm talking 6 months to a year, and then you occasionally have a little bit, over time, you will become less reactive when you do have it. Now, that's not everyone. Like, if someone's celiac, of course, they have to avoid it.
Right.
But no, she's very accurate in telling you that.
Okay, great. Well, now I know. But I did think it was interesting that Samantha did say, she said yesterday, you're not saying that you have to eliminate these foods forever. It's just that your gut is so inflamed right now and you got so many things going on that it just needs a reset. So she said that if I could do it for at least 30 to 60 days, that would probably be best for me. Mm-hmm. We'll see.
Yeah. And that's a good general rule of thumb with any sensitivity. Because then the beautiful thing too is if you can avoid for 30 days and then slowly add it back and maybe you journal about it or intuitively listen to your body, not just 30 minutes after you ate it, but even a couple days after you ate it. Because for some people, there can be a delayed response. You know, for me personally, I forever come up with a gluten sensitivity, but I can tell when it slips in. You go to a restaurant and if you're not careful and if you don't ask all the questions, it can slip in. And I personally can tell because 2 days later, I get a little rash on my lower abdomen. And I was like, oh, that restaurant we went to the other day, they said it was gluten-free, but clearly it was not. They tried. It's super mild at this point. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting that we haven't really talked a lot about on here was the emotional triggers. And so it came up specifically on my brain scan and said, these are the top 3 emotional red flags that we have. And when Samantha and I were talking yesterday, I was like, but I don't feel like I struggle with those things. I'm so confused. So can you tell them a little bit about why that could be?
Yeah. So we test for those emotional blocks in the brain scan because if someone is chronically stressed about that, or they went through a traumatic event, or they really struggle when someone brings that emotion into their environment, it too can create that inflammatory response. I mean, if you think about someone that just irritates the heck out of you, you almost like feel your skin start to boil when you have to deal with them.
Yes.
And that creates stress, especially in the brain. And so it could be something like, let's say, someone's depressed and they're having that block of joy. It could be that part of their brain is blocking it because of a neurotransmitter imbalance, which we test for there. Or maybe it is that their spouse is chronically depressed and you're struggling with them because you want them to be joyful. And despite everything that you're doing, you can't help them get there. And that is a negative reaction for you that then is also creating stress in your brain.
Yeah.
So, and on the full scan side, we didn't actually talk about this yesterday. And I love this because in traditional Chinese medicine, you have different organs that are tied to emotions. So sometimes without even specifically testing an emotion in the full scan, we can see indicators of potentially what someone's going through because, like, for example, the liver, it holds the emotion of anger. So if we see someone with, which your liver was not stressed, but if we see someone with a stressed liver, oftentimes it's not uncommon that they have some potential pent up anger, or the lungs hold grief. The kidneys hold fear. And so you can kind of look at someone's full scan and start to understand, now, is it the fact that their kidneys are stressed, that they have this fear? Or is it the fear that's then stressing the kidneys? It doesn't matter at that point. Either way, it needs to be resolved so that the organ will function well and they can release that fear. But it's a fascinating thing to look at. And you never really know which one stems from the point of the core origin of it until you get to talk to them and see if they've had things that have curated that fear. If not, it's most likely just the stress of the organ itself.
Well, I just think that's all so interesting because, and you guys, Girl Gang, you'll hear this later on in the season, but I interviewed Jordan Rubin, who has actually healed himself from cancer multiple times with diet and with addressing emotions. And he said he literally, because I think his doctor gave him a 1% chance, I think, of living. Like, it was an insanely bad case of cancer. And he said he just went into like truly being like, Lord, I'm believing you for this. I am like turning away from fear. Fear is not permitted in my life. And so then he literally said he went through every single trauma he had ever had, anything he'd ever done wrong to someone else, and he apologized for it. And he thought of anything, even when he was a kid, and like a baseball coach yelled and it upset him. He was like, I literally wrote it all out in prayer and gave it to God. And he was like, I truly believe that was a pivotal part of my healing, was dealing with those trapped emotions. And to me, this is such a cool tool because I had no idea that some of those emotions that came up in my scan, like, I was like, those don't make sense. Like, I don't struggle with that. But then when she said, well, it could be your kids' fears, it could be your husband's like internal stressors, I was like, oh my gosh, they are. Like, how wild is it? I mean, it truly is mind blowing. We talk about mind, body, and spirit health here all the time and how interconnected it is. But then when you see it scientifically, like, yes, like 100%, you're like, wow, God, that is just so crazy.
It's eye-opening. Yeah, when I test myself for emotions as well, sometimes I like shake my head. I'm like, of course. Of course, I need to work on that. My spouse has been telling me for about weeks at this point.
So wild. Okay, well, we are quickly running out of time. So Samantha, tell everybody where they can get this amazing testing done. Tell them, anything else that you want them to know about you, your brand, what y'all help with that maybe we didn't get to so far today in the podcast.
Yeah, so we work with all sorts of people. Yeah, originally it was chronically ill people, but at this point we are often working with people on all realms, whether it's just some mild bloating, weight gain, sadness, aches and pains, like the whole gamut. And so I would say do not give up hope, especially from my story, because I was very close to giving up hope many times. And I am so thankful that I found this tool because it might take a while for someone to get back on their feet, depending how long they've been dealing with something. But we're always going to find something for someone to work on. There's never been someone that's been tested that didn't have this aha moment in their results. So if someone's interested in testing, our website is CBHenergetics.com. And they don't need a referral to order. They can just order direct online. And the full scan is the best place to start. And then if they have a pet and they want their pet tested as well, petmedella.com for our fur babies. And and then of course, after someone gets their results, it just takes 7 days once we receive the samples, they'll get an email. They can view all the results online. They can order their regimen right from there and book a call with one of our practitioners too.
Love it so much. Such a cool resource, truly. So thank you for all the work that you've done to make it more accessible to people all over. I was about to say the nation, and the world. That's amazing. And then I ask everybody this in closing. So Samantha, how do you personally reset?
How do I reset? Usually on weekends.
Okay.
I set my phone down. I put my phone away and I literally reset that TLC that I need. I don't watch the news. I don't go on social media. Weekends are my reset almost every single weekend. I look forward to them.
So good. Yes, we all need that. That is for sure. Well, we so appreciate you being here on the show. You're amazing. Girl Gang, thank you guys so much for joining us for another episode of Healthy by Heather Brown, and I will see you next Tuesday. Have a blessed day. Bye. Okay, that was awesome, Samantha. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening today. If you want to try CBH Energetics for yourself, go to CBHEnergetics.com and use my code Heather20 for $20 off any test, including both the ones we talked about that I took on the podcast today. Heather5 for $5 off regimens, or Heather sub for $5 off every month of a subscription, plus 10% off remedies all year. All the links and codes are in today's show notes as well. Y'all let me know if you take the test and what you find out about your health. Can't wait to hear.
Okay, friend, that's a wrap on this week's episode. If you're not already following me on Instagram, make sure to screenshot this episode, share it to your stories, and tag @Healthy by Heather Brown so I can connect with you in my DMs. It truly brings me so much joy to see how these episodes impact you. Make sure to subscribe so we can see you back here next Tuesday for our weekly show. In case you don't know, your downloads, ratings, and reviews are the actual lifeblood of this podcast, and it helps spread the word to your friends and family. So please hit the download button on this episode and leave a 5-star rating if you super loved it. And if we're really BFFs, you'll spread the happy and text this podcast link to someone who needs to hear it today for some encouragement. Scroll down to the show notes on this episode to see any and all links mentioned, freebies to fuel your health goals, prayer-related episodes, and the 7-day free trial of my exclusive membership where I personally coach and cheer you on in whole health. While you're there, make sure to check out my Amazon storefront with healthy snacks, my favorite look for less workout outfits, and books and devotionals that challenge me in my faith. If you ever need to find my Amazon storefront, just Google Healthy by Heather Brown Amazon and it will come up. Have a great day, Girl Gang.